Hi there, my name is Stuart Wilson, and in this tutorial we're going to look at how to bake ID maps using 3ds Max. So here what I have is a typical tileable brick set used for buildings, whether it's for game art or visualizations. This is actually a brick that I used in a scene quite recently. I'll just show you. And as you can see, we've got some tileable bricks. There's some variation in the texture itself. And what I did was I used the ID map that I'm going to show you to bake and use with this texture. So I use this in pretty much most of my workflows on a day-to-day basis, and I'm going to just show you how I did that. So in 3ds Max here, I'm just going to go into Perspective P, and what I'll do is I'll select the low poly. So what I've done is I have just a simple plane, and for it to be tileable it needs to be in the power 2, so it's 1024 by 1024 or 2048 by 2048, etc, etc. Either way, as long as it's in the power 2, then when you go to bake this it should be perfectly square along all sides. So what I'll do is I'll go back out here, back into perspective. Now what we're going to do is we're going to bake the IDs of this brick onto this plane. So the ID map, just think of it as like almost like a color selector. So when you're in Photoshop, for example, and you want to select individual bricks, you'll be able to do that with the ID map, and you won't have to make selections or try and rub things out, because it'll never look correct or precise, and you'll miss details. So also the ID map is really great for using Quixel or Substance Designer, or Painter rather. You can bring it into those packages and use it there as well. So what I normally do first is, with this just being a plane, I'll go into the modifier list and look for the Unwrap UVW, and if I open up UV editor, you'll be able to see this is flat here, so that's fine. We don't want it to be smaller or larger, because that way when we bake the IDs it won't be able to tile properly. So as long as it's like this, that's fine. So I'm going to close that down, right click, collapse all. Now what we want to do is we want to tell 3ds Max I want to render the bricks onto this plane and create a sort of color selection onto that plane there. So what I would do next is, with that plane being set with UVs, I would then go into my materials. So I'll just close that in a sec there and push M. I'll just bring this along. I've kind of skipped ahead a wee bit, but essentially what I did was, in the maps area, we click for a multi-sub object. Just have a look for it. I'll be there somewhere. Yeah, so it's just up here. So I'll just drag that over here. And as you can see, what you can do is you can plug a number of materials into these slots. So what I've done here is I've actually created 5 different slots, and each of them have a unique color. So this will act as each individual selection for our brick. So I'll just quickly go into the colors here. Now what you have to do is this will be unchecked at the start. So as you can see, this sphere's got shadows, and that's something that we don't want. We want pure hues, so that when you select this, it's actually going to select the whole thing. So what I've done is I've used a diffuse and selected red. So what you need to do is you need to check color. So essentially it's giving it self illumination, it's glowing, and you want to give this color the exact same. So there we go, you then have a solid color. So I've done that with all the other colors there, as you can see. So once you've done all that, select the multi-sub object. Now what I want to do is I want to target the high poly bricks, because this is where we're going to make our selection. So if I assign this to the bricks there, now as you can see they're all random colours there, and I'll show you how I did that in a wee sec. I'll just quickly go into wireframe, because what I've done is I've actually got a plane between the bricks here, so that's going to act as the grout in between. So if I go into elements, what I've done is I've already selected that plane in between the bricks. I'm going to push M again. use a basic grey shader. So this is all standard materials, no V-Ray, Corona or anything like that. This is just a very basic shader. Assign that to the plane there like I did. And if I uncheck that, now you can see that in between all the bricks there I've got that grey kind of grout. So that'll actually act as a selection as well. So if you might want to colour in just in between the bricks, then you can do that. The important thing with bricks is you want it to be tileable, so this could be over a huge section. So if you look in this example here, you know, I've got bricks not just on the small part of the wall here, it's actually on taller parts and larger areas, and that all has to tile, otherwise, you know, it will break the kind of consistency and it won't look normal. So what I did was, I'll just select the actual high poly. So I'm selecting the high poly brick here, not the low poly plane. Go into the modifiers list, and what we want is, if we type in M, and as you can see, material by element, this is what you want. And as you can see here, you can either have random distributions, or you can set material IDs and how often you want them to appear on the mesh. So what you do is you just click on random distribute. Now we've got 5 colours, so we set the ID count to 5, and as you can see, it then puts all the colours into random order on the brick. Now what you really want to do as well is, I'm just going to wireframe this, so that's the plane that represents a square here. And for this to tile properly, especially with the texture and the colours itself, all around the edges, so from one side to the other, the ID colours have to match. So you want that to match all the way around the plane here. Now what I've done is I've kind of skipped ahead, and I've already done that, and I'll show you what I mean in a second. So I'm just going to open up my layers. Oh, let's see. I'm going to just hide this, and hit wireframe. So this is another one that I've done. And as you can see, each colour from top to bottom, all the colours they match. And what you'll notice is the bricks, they're kind of offset from the edge as well, because you don't want anything line up perfectly with the square or the edge of the low poly. Otherwise you're going to start getting really noticeable patterns, especially when it tiles over large areas. So what I've done is there, as you can see, that's me put all the colour IDs in order, so it's all in random in the middle, but around the edges it all matches up. So the next thing I want to do is I want to then begin setting this up so we can render this colour ID onto this plane. So what I'll do first, with our plane selected, this does have a UV map on it. I'm going to just quickly check just to make sure. I want to open this up. Oh, sorry, that's the unwrap. Wrap. Open UVW. Yes, that's square. That's fine. Right click, collapse all. Click close it. So with the plane selected, I'm then going to press 0 on my keyboard. Now what this will bring up is render to texture. So this is what we're going to use to actually bake the color ID map onto the plane. So as you can see here, we've got the brick low poly selected, so that's our plane there. That's where we want ID to go. The pad is normally set to 2 here, but I've set it to 0. So what that does is it specifies how many pixels will overlap the actual UV islands. So if I put it to 2, for example, when this bakes, it's then going to bake 2 pixels just off the actual UV island. So you only put this up if you think you're seeing seams or anything like that, but I've done a test before and putting it at 0 is fine. So that's okay. So next thing what I do is go into projection mapping, because we need to select what we actually want to bake. So this is our brick high poly. So I'm going to select that. So what it's done is it's actually then created what's called a cage, and what this tells us 3ds Max to do is from the plane to that cage, we want you to bake what's sort of in between there. Now as you can see, this cage is a bit off, so that's not going to give us a nice even texture surface there. So on the right, under the projection modifier which has been created, we click reset over here. So this is for the cage under that heading. You may have to scroll down a little bit if it's off your screen a bit. So hit reset. That's going to bring the cage back down to the plane. And what I like to do is I like to enable shading. And with the amount, we're going to push that back up. So bring that up. Keep scrolling up. So I'm just using my mouse here, just left clicking the arrow on the right here. You can adjust or move it up or down. So ideally you want it as close as you can to the actual brick itself. This will ensure the best result there. So once you've done that, if you want something kind of like this, that'll be alright. We then go back to options here under projection mapping. This is sometimes checked, ray mischeck. We want to uncheck this. So this is if there's any problems with actual baking. What 3ds Max will do is it'll highlight it in red, so you maybe have, for example, like a brick coming through the cage here. It'll actually show you in red where it'll happen. So I'm going to just uncheck that. Let's go into setup. This is for filtering, so for anti-aliasing, and we'll go into here. Now what I've done is I've selected Metro Nitra Valley. I find this works best and global super sampling, sorry. I set this to Hammersley. This is how 3ds Max is going to get the color properties for each pixel. So with this being very colourful, of course, I select Hammersley and I tend to find that gives a really good result. So I'll close all this down. Next stage, it'll say mapping coordinates, so make sure you use existing channel. So what it is the UV map that we have created with the plane. We want that to just be flat, we don't want that changed. So I've just selected use existing channel, both in sub objects and the main objects. The next part, we actually want to select how we're going to output this. So in our case, we want to bake an ID map. So what I do is I click add, and I use complete maps. This will actually bake the color information of the texture onto the plane. So I'll just click that, add elements, and you can specify the resolution. Now usually what I like to do is I like to bake it quite high. So if I'm going to use, say, Quixel for example, which I actually did with that example that I showed you the house, I actually bake the size at 4K, so 4096 by 4096. There's some preset tabs here you can do that, but you have to normally put the values in here. But for test purposes, I'm going to just set this as 1024 and 1024, so that'll bake pretty quickly, and it'll give us quite a good result. So what you'll want to do as well is you want to name your map and specify where you want to save it. So I'll go to the desktop here, then here I would normally save like this. In this case I'll call it color ID, and we'll hit save. So it'll ask me if I want to overwrite this. I'll hit yes, and then you'll get the Targa image control option. Sorry, the format you want to save it in is a Targa as well. So I set it as 24 pixels. You don't want to save it as 32. That's only if you have alphas, so for transparency or things like that, for example. And if compressed is checked, make sure that's unchecked. So I'll hit OK. So there we go. So we've now got the ID map there, and that should be us pretty much good to go. So what I will do now is I will hit render. So maybe just window this so you can see. And so what this will do is it'll actually go through and actually render the ID mask. So as you can see around the edges here, the colours each side are matching, which is exactly what we want. The UVs have stretched over the entire texture coordinate area, so there's no gaps, no seams, nothing like that. So as we can see, that's now complete. So I'm going to just close this, and what I'll do is I'll show you in Photoshop the actual result there. So I've got Photoshop here, and I've set my document to 2048 by 2048. So it's just a 2 by 2 document, and this is what I commonly do to check just to make sure there's no visible seams. So I'll click place. This is our color ID map, and this is it here. So I'm going to just quickly snap it up here, push enter, and what I'll do for quickness is hold Alt and then Shift and then drag, click and drag, Alt Shift, click and drag, bring this along. So I'll just zoom in. There you go, and as you can see, there's no tiling, there's no no distortion or anything, so the texture's tiled perfectly. Then select next two. So I've just selected those two layers, Alt Shift, click and drag, and here you go. So that's that entire area tiled. So hopefully that's been helpful, and thanks for looking at this tutorial.